What is it?
Well, it's called a randomizer, and it's fitted to the guidance systems and operates under a very complex scientific principle called potluck. Now, no one knows where we're going. Not even the Black Guardian.
Not even us.
Hello and welcome to the Randomizer Podcast, episode 9. I am Tim.
I'm Charles.
And I'm Connor.
Yes, another special guest this week. We have Charles' son Connor is joining us. So, as usual, a spoiler warning for the latest Doctor Who episode, Ascension of the Cybermen, and indeed spoilers for all Doctor Who that precedes that. Also, a spoiler warning for spoilers, because we will be having a tangent this week which talks about the nature of spoilers and how we relate to them. Let's talk about Ascension of the Cybermen. The end begins.
It does indeed. Really enjoyed this one. Very fast paced, didn't let it up for a second. Set up, obviously, episode 2 rather wonderfully. The Ireland stuff was rather weird. I'm sort of assuming that's Gallifrey. Very good episode. Lone Cybermen again. Really frightening, creepy. New designers. Cybermen's looking fantastic. It's going well.
What's your hot take, Connor?
I agree with most of that, to be honest. It was really exciting and fast paced. It's a good continuation from last week. And again, this lone Cyberman character is really interesting. I don't know what it is. It's something we've sort of spoken about before, like giving the Cyberman a Davros type figure.
I definitely think that. I mean, I think they attempted that with John Lumick back in Rise of the Cybermen. But I think it works better with this sort of character. It's ironically making the Cybermen sort of really creepy and scary, but it's taking the one thing that Cybermen don't have, which is emotion.
Yes, I was interested in the episode. I had to watch it twice, and that's the first time I've done that this season, because I think I watched it when I was very tired, actually. My eyes were kind of closing at some point, so I don't think that was its fault. And so I went back and watched it again, and did find it a lot more satisfying the second time. The first time, I was a little underwhelmed. It's hard to separate what was just being dog-tired and what was actually anything with the episode itself, but there's obviously Earthshock homages going on with armies of marching Cybermen. I saw a hilarious tweet of a still of the cyber drones, the cyber heads that were flying over, all kind of frozen in midair, and somebody saying this is Cybermen on graduation day.
That was the only bit that Connor and I were both like, oh, that's a little bit clunky.
Is there a head in there? That's what I want to know.
Yes, it's been...
Or if you got a Cyberman without a head back at base piloting the drone on its smartphone app or whatever.
Maybe it's a cross between them and the Tocliffe.
And is this the Irish thing? You alluded to Gallifrey. Maybe it's that old joke of Gallifrey being in Ireland.
Getting back to the drone heads, Connor and I were talking about this, weren't we, about the fact that there was at least one good point.
It is the sort of bit that I maybe cringed at, because luckily it was at the start of the episode, so it was the only point. But at least it did kind of serve a purpose in that it did further the plot and actually made an effect on the rest of the episode, because you know, it got rid of the Doctor's, or all the Doctor's, like, equipment that would have been really handy if it, you know, can remain there. And actually, you know, killed a couple of people, which got her really riled up.
Yeah. No, it was quite sort of brutal how little her preparations counted for at all, really.
Yeah, I think that was it. Sort of had a sort of sense of impending doom to the episode in a lot of ways. It's sort of a bit Empire Strikes Back in that sense, you know, sort of everything they're doing just seems to lead towards another disaster. I have a couple of points that I thought were a little bit weird. Right, why did 2 cyber ships appear when we had the lone Cyberman and his 2 mates, and that was it? And then basically the Doctor steals one of the ships and then they pursue in the other.
Maybe the other one was just full of heads.
I mean, the ships are sort of designed for 2 pilots, right?
Yes,
with arms and legs, and the leader just seems to stand about.
There's a bit of a sort of sex dungeon design to the cyber control rooms, isn't there?
Yeah.
Strapped into this piloting chair.
And also, okay, fine, she escapes in the ship, but they said that you couldn't walk to the TARDIS, that you'd been killed. Why didn't she just fly to the TARDIS? I realise the point of that is to further the plot and get her moving. But, you know, when they're actually doing something like this, I'll overlook little minor nuggets, you know, because That's just being petty.
I doubt it's the least plausible leaving behind of the TARDIS that the show's ever done. You could almost make a checklist for reasons we can't just run off to the TARDIS this week.
They were in a rush.
Yeah.
I think flying to the TARDIS, getting out that ship, parking that ship, getting out of it, getting into the TARDIS. It's very time consuming.
You could just see it do backing in.
This cyber vehicle is cyber reversing.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's another moment that struck me as a little odd, and I wondered if it was tied into the end of Can You Hear Me with the Doctor's social awkwardness moment with Graham, which was when, now I forget the character's name, the lady that they meet on the planet is explaining what's been going on, and the Doctor cuts her dead and says, I don't want your life story.
Yeah, that was a bit rude.
It
That
was.
was Julie Graham.
Julie Graham. And do you remember the character name? They've all got quite sort of strange character names.
Raphael or
Raphael or something. I was trying to think of like that blue engineer, blue plumber.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Ruffalo, wasn't it? Another tiny little line thing, which is Graham's fluff. And is it a fluff? When he sort of says, I'm the something. And I've seen speculation about Graham's the Doctor, and it's like, what? They're surely not. And
They've kind of went a bit mad online with that.
but it's not a sort of time of television production where a fluff like that gets left to stand.
Yeah, that really feels weird, because doing editing ourselves, you know what you go over things with a fine
you
tooth
don't
comb.
leave in like lines like that or missing hands or anything. Oh, hang on. So either the editing in this sort of era is like below par, or that is maybe misdirection.
I've just realised. Okay, you had the missing finger, the missing hand. You've got
The missing
heads this
plot.
week.
Missing heads.
So, maybe we're basically going to build a
Like
Doctor.
a Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a weird one. I didn't notice it at the time, but went back and watched when it was pointed out. And sure enough, it does sound like he begins to say, I'm the Doctor. And that is just odd.
It's not even a bad cut. It's
It's
one
a
full
line,
sentence
yeah.
as well. He just makes a mistake.
I mean, maybe he's the Doctor that he clearly thinks he is obviously William Hartnell. Since he's got the flush.
Oh, yeah, of course he is.
But no, that is a very strange moment. I don't know if this moment with Julie Graham was sort of more along the social awkwardness kind of spectrum that they're casting the Doctor onto. But again, it was another thing. It was definitely played deliberately because there was a sort of twist to the face from Julie Graham as a reaction. So it wasn't sort of just an incidental thing that got brushed over. I mean, the Doctor's done plenty of this sort of thing before in terms of, Pertwee and Tom Baker would often just ride roughshod over whichever person was boring them at the moment.
Absolutely.
I think maybe she's in this particular story. She's very impatient because she she's trying to get all that stuff set up straight away, and then when it gets all blown up, we get the whole thing of her being really aggravated at her companions again.
Yeah, after the Ryan smackdown the previous episode.
Yeah,
Even
it happened in Fugitive of the Judoon as well, where that was another smackdown for Ryan as well.
Yay!
There's been several moments this season when I've actively asked myself, why are they staying with her?
Yeah, it is actually becoming pretty obvious that, we're not going to have all the companions by the end of this, I think, or maybe the forthcoming special. I, for one, will be glad to either be whittled down to one companion or for them all to go. I like Graham, don't get me wrong, and I think he has his potential. My point of view on what's his name? Oh yeah, the chair. But it's just it was
So
something
cruel.
we were talking about this week. Lance Parkin, the Doctor Who author.
Yes.
Used to do some of the BBC books and New Adventures. Now, he had been discussing the roles of the companions and so forth and missed opportunities. And there was one thing I latched onto, which was in the first episode, Ryan, first thing he's doing is blogging. Why didn't they do webisodes where you would get Ryan's blog about the previous story? You could have Ryan sort of bigging himself up a bit more and stuff. That would have built his character.
Yeah.
Because you're limited in the episode, you've got a little bit of character building with Ryan and stuff like that. So many little tiny things that in the RTD era, that would have been a definite.
Or Moffat with things like Pond Life and so on.
Exactly.
But I guess it takes both the time, effort, and probably there's no more money for that. So you need a showrunner who's gonna want to kind of...
Can be asked.
I don't think that's fair, but maybe there is a sort of a scheduling thing, but I don't know. You can only speculate. So, I mean, lots of excitement for tonight. My other big sort of takeaway was that this was the most part one-y of a two-part season finale I've ever seen. An utterly unsurprising shock ending with Sasha Dewan glumping out of the big portal.
I'll be honest. I wasn't shocked that Gallifrey turned up either, and because it just seemed that was what it was going to be. But it did feel epic. It really had a massively epic feel.
Because the episode was so like epic and fast paced, when it actually came to the ending, it didn't feel like it was about to end. Then you get the Master coming out and saying, "Oh, this is going to change next week."
It's actually
you could have as well have said, "Oh, that's all we got time for, folks." But
exactly. It's the first time since Chibnall took over where an episode's ended where I'm like,
"Give me more."
Give me more. I want to know. That's a good sign. But I am excited for it.
Me too. But we'll see. I mean, I really hope there's some sort of progression for whatever Ruth's place in it all is. This Brendan arc, we haven't really talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the weirdest part of it.
I think it was the most skillful part of it.
Yeah,
actually.
it was very, very good. I mean, it makes this a crossover episode as well with Broadchurch. The bit where he falls off the cliff is the actual beach in Broadchurch.
Oh, okay.
So,
So maybe it's David Tennant who's going to come along.
Well, it could well be. But I genuinely think this whole thing will work out as something doctory, but it will lead into that joke of Gallifrey, that's somewhere in Ireland, isn't it?
It'd be a shame if they didn't. When they take Brendan back to the police room and strap him into the chair, the sort of headphones and the blue light on that apparatus felt Cybermen-y.
But it also felt Chameleon Archie as well.
Okay,
Because the character didn't seem surprised by any of it.
No.
It's just very placid, isn't he?
His adopted dad and that policeman were there in front of him. They hadn't aged a day, and he's like an old man. He just doesn't seem shocked by anything. It's like he's expecting...
I still don't know, though, if that's just weak writing and pacing, though. Because it could just be that it's all meant to happen so fast, but it didn't pan out that way in the edit. So actually, there would have been room for him to have some lines. You feel the absence of those lines as an oddity.
I mean, the fact that he was found as a child had me thinking of those lines from Utopia. I was found as a naked child on the shores of the Silver Devastation.
Is the Silver Devastation anywhere near Broadchurch?
Well, it could well be.
It's been a good name for the episode.
Maybe the Silver Devastation is on the A452 and you take a left turn to Gallifrey.
You're thinking of Centre Parks, aren't you? No, I mean, the Silver Devastation sounds like a Cybermen episode for sure. So you could tie it in. I enjoyed that it didn't really tie in at all yet, but that means it bloody well has to do this week. So we're recording on Sunday afternoon ahead of the final episode of this season.
So we'll know tonight what's happening, basically.
We must ask the doctor.
Dr. Schultz has returned, and welcome, Dr. Schultz. I wanted to ask you this week about the transmat technology, which we see occasionally in Doctor Who. It's kind of Doctor Who's version of the transporters in Star Trek or the teleporter in Blake 7. A way of getting from A to B instantly without using a TARDIS. Now, I'm aware there's been scientific research into teleportation at a kind of very, very microscopic level, and the idea of quantum entanglement suggests that information can be passed over long distances, seemingly in contradiction to the limit of the speed of light. I wanted to ask if there's any chance that we'll see human teleportation one day in the near future.
Well, of course, this is completely implausible.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz. They were inspirational.
A man is the sum of his memories, a Time Lord even more so.
So this is your Cheatin Memory, which is when we have randomly selected an episode from Doctor Who's past, and we first of all see what we can remember about it, and then go away and rewatch it, and come back full of fresh insights, or indeed hackneyed old cliches. This time we didn't select Matt Smith for once, but we got a Peter Capaldi episode, The Caretaker, and I really enjoyed rewatching this.
Yeah, so did I. The thing I really forgot was the Capaldi episodes and Moffat in general tended to have these sort of bizarre cold opens, that have nothing to do with the episode as such. I mean, we start off the Doctor and Clara are chained to some sort of monolith in a desert.
Oh, yes.
And it's all little mini adventures that Clara's been on while trying to juggle her life. It's very coupling. She's leaving some sort of underwater world and getting into a taxi, and she's still got seaweed in her hair, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It was very amusing, really nice start to the episode. Capaldi is playing brilliant comedy in this one about deep cover and everything.
It's a romp, without doubt, this one, I think. And it felt like a really long cold open, actually. I think it's kind of two cold opens, isn't it? Because it both does that montage of Clara's double life, and then it sets up Capaldi in the school, and then titles.
Yeah. a very sort of average episode, you know, no massively high stakes, just a nice little character piece and a bit of fun.
I think we're settling into defining average as doesn't have any huge plot arc moments, which is not really a fair definition, I think. But I'm I know what you're meaning. It's one of those sort of steady, here we go episodes without huge links to anything else either side of it. Well, beyond the character arc for Clara.
Actually, character piece was how I was going to describe it as well, because essentially that is what it is. The story's fine, and Skybox Blitzer feels more like a Sarah Jane Adventures villain rather than Doctor Who. I feel it definitely would have been much more suited to that series. It's very enjoyable, and I think it's definitely more to set up Danny as a character and him and the Doctor's issue with each other, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand why Clara got so much hate. I think the idea of a companion that becomes addicted to the Doctor's lifestyle is actually quite an interesting concept.
I totally agree. I got really annoyed with Fandom regarding the hatred for Clara. You know, she's sort of this person, I'm in control of my life. I can do this. I can do these things. And she's enjoying it. There is an absolute joy in her time with the Doctor. She's a sort of adrenaline junkie.
And this episode confronts her with her two worlds. And then the measure of the person is in how they rise to that and how they deal with that with, I guess, both the kind of the honesty of actually, okay, I've been playing you two off against each other, or I've been trying to hide you from you, and to salvage the relationships in both cases. That's when Clara grows a lot, because she has suddenly got to reconcile this sort of double life. And for me, it's always this unbearable tension of like, oh, when's this going to collapse? The light comedy touches of the episode make for a nice, safe way to do that, an enjoyable way. I also love that we have a disruptive influence. Courtney, isn't it?
She's absolutely wonderful. I really liked her.
I think they go on to sort of look in the face that kind of tension of bringing an actual child in, which is the danger.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Clara holds the Doctor to account, if I remember
because he
rightly.
has a duty of care.
Yeah, and he has a kind of gung-ho attitude to it. I think also it's partly something that crystallised when we were talking about his relationship with Amy Pond, especially young Amy, Amelia. And so again with Courtney, he just doesn't see human beings as all that different. No. You know, this is a young human being, not that different from the other human being that he's hanging around with, Clara. And so he is just like, yeah, come with me and have fun, and thinks about it later to some extent.
I think he looks his age as just a concept rather than a reality.
Yeah, and he's kind of naive that way, which is kind of charming, although obviously it puts people in danger.
Yeah, because he says him and Clara look the same age. Danny sort of...
says, is that your dad?
Space dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Space dad. Yeah.
Going on about, you look different. Have you had a wash?
Yes.
Capaldi's Doctor in this series, at least, is maybe series 9 as well, it's probably the most alien the Doctor's been since classic.
Yeah.
And actually in this first season, which is the one I found the hardest to get to grips with the character, actually, I think he is kind of quite socially awkward, you might say, in a more confident Sheldon sort of way, Sheldon from Big Bang sort of way, than he just says what he thinks and doesn't give a shit for people's feelings. He is challenged by Danny. I've mentioned this before, and I like that it holds to account the Doctor's use of the military and his relationship with the military. It's something that's been too convenient. It's been a sonic screwdriver to be able to just pick up the phone to Una or whoever and have somebody else do the messy business with the bombs, and this is him getting actually held to account for that.
Another sort of thing with Fandom, don't like Danny, this, that, the next thing. I thought it was a great performance. I thought it was an interesting look at Doctor Who from that other point of view. You know, this is a guy, a soldier. He's been under orders for a long time, like he says to Clara. People like the Doctor, they push you, they make you do things and stuff, which is a good description of the Doctor. But he's also suffering from PTSD, and he sees the negatives of it. He's seeing the things that, when you're in the Doctor's world, that don't necessarily come to mind. He holds a mirror up to him, because this whole season was the Doctor reassessing himself, am I a good man? It was an interesting journey to take.
It's a brave and confident thing for the series to do, to sort of look at the edges of the character that way.
I do like Danny being in opposition to the Doctor. I don't think it's very often. You kind of expect, every kind of companion type character to come in and see the Doctor's life and be like, oh my god, this is amazing. But I think it's quite refreshing every now and then to have someone who looks at it and is like, no, this is this is dangerous stuff.
Yeah, who do you think you are?
Yeah, why would you?
We've had that with people like Jackie in the past who they've got, and again with Danny, I guess you've got someone they love is in the Doctor's world, and there's this clearly protective instinct of, well, what are you doing? What danger are you leading them to? And for Danny, that's seen through his recognition of the Doctor as a commanding officer.
Rory at first as well wasn't taken with the Doctor.
There's another element of the Doctor's character which is exposed here, which is this slightly kind of smug, patronising, but also quite alien way of crossing the regenerations, in that he jumps to the conclusion that the one with the bow tie in the staff room is Clara's boyfriend, and is then all kind of touched and smug that she's fallen for the guy who looks a bit like his past self.
I really like that little joke.
It works as comedy.
Yeah, it really does.
It's also quite an insight into the Doctor's ego. Yeah, and also I think his assumptions about what Clara wants from their relationship. We've talked about it last time. There's always this kind of spectre in New Who of the attraction potentially between the Doctor and the companion, and I think things like him sort of saying you look different if you had a wash, and the Doctor's very alien interactions with Clara like that also serve to completely desexualize any kind of relationship that they're having.
Up until the new series, the companion has always been sidelined in favour of the Doctor. They were literally there to say, what's that? How big is it? What does it do? How are we going to solve this?
Oops, I broke my ankle.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Until Ace came along, and the companion has been front and centre. And I think sometimes, fans are a bit nose out of joint. There was a lot of backlash against Rose and so on. And I think it's just a case of, why is this person important? The Doctor should be the only important person.
That's just narrow-minded.
And I don't buy into that. I'm watching it. Yeah, I'm watching it because I'm interested in the Doctor, but I find the whole thing interesting, and I really like the fact that these are people with complex lives.
But also, the show's flexible enough that it can work from multiple angles. You can follow the adventures of a time-travelling alien, and you can also follow the life of an ordinary human who bumps into a time-travelling alien. You can look at that structurally in several different ways.
No, I totally agree, because a lot of the outrage at that time, I remember it was like, oh, it's not Doctor Who anymore, it's Clara. That was a horrible line that I heard so much. But it's like, oh, when has Doctor Who been all about the companion? And it's like, quite a while.
Pretty much since 2005,
Yeah, a very long time. Cause,
some would say since 1988.
Yeah, the point of the companion is that it's the accessible character. You can't relate to the Doctor, really. You can relate to aspects, but as a character, you're like, I can't relate to this character that's thousands of years old and comes from another planet. However, the companion is my accessible point into the show. So yeah, they should be kind of the main focus.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Moffat's Sherlock. You can't relate to Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock. You can admire him, but John Watson is the one you relate to.
It's also not a zero-sum game. You don't have to have A or B as the main character. It's an interaction between all the characters.
Could it have been affected by tangential deviation coming out of the warp ellipse?
I mean, the best bit about all this Clara, it's not Doctor Who, it's Clara Who, was Moffat had obviously heard all this and completely trolled fans by the end of the season, where Clara's in the titles. You get her eyes in the titles, and I just punched air at that moment, because part of me, I really, really like the idea of pissing Fandom off or whatever. Because
this is why you should never be showrunner.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't like Fandom, but I admit that I'm part of the problem with Fandom. Fandom has that sort of entitlement. I'm fully happy to say that I'm as much of a dick as they can be.
Oh, I don't think you're that bad.
I do have real issues with the toxicity in fandom, not just Doctor Who, but general, all fandoms have that.
Brings it out of us about having something you intensely enjoy and love. And I think also the loudest voices get amplified. Also, there is, I think, emotional maturity to be had in terms of, acknowledging that you're precious about the thing you love, but then getting the hell over yourself. And just realising that it's not just for you.
Yeah.
And that the wider the reach, the richer the programme. And, I remember things like Standing on Forbidden Planet when the new series came back, being surrounded by 10-year-olds clamouring for all the new toys there were, and just thinking, gosh, it's really, it's moved on.
I sort of found that lovely, whereas a lot of people were pissed off that their ownership had ended. I mean, let's talk to the person who sort of
the voice
came
of
in.
Youth.
Yeah, who came in with new fandom.
I think it is really fun to stir the pot sometimes, because I'd completely forgot about that thing from Death in Heaven that you mentioned. I thought you were going to talk about Flatline, where she basically pretends to be the Doctor for an episode. I think there's a lot of shows and films in general that now have fans that are kind of worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're taking consolation for the fact that we're not the worst anymore.
I could name some, but then...
But please do. I mean,
Oh, okay, Star Wars.
Yeah,
Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty fans are horrible.
God, the bloody lot. Have you ever? I mean, if you ever Google Rick and Morty McDonald's Szechuan, and you will see the biggest bunch of fucking wankers you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I say this to my friends a lot. I'm like, look, I like Star Wars or I like Rick and Morty, I like Doctor Who, but I hate the fans.
Yeah, and
I obviously don't mean all of them. I mean the vicious ones who think they own the show. It gets me so much, and it does kind of ruin it sometimes, because granted, Series 11 wasn't great, but this series is a massive step up. But there are people who will be negative about it anyway. It's things like the Series 12 box set on Amazon right now has thousands of 1-star reviews.
It's not even out yet, is it?
No, it's not. But the thing is, if you read these 1-star reviews, they were being written before the series started. They were being written in December 2019.
Yep.
And obviously it started in January. And it's like,
yeah,
come on.
Literally prejudice.
Please stop this.
I totally agree. Yeah, I don't hold with a lot of the criticisms, you know, of it's wokeness, it's political correctness gone mad. You know, I'm not the sort of person who will totally dismiss something, you know, or sort of just to say something to be right on. The moans about the fact that, you know, Jodie's been cast, the moans about the fact that, admittedly, I've moaned at the way certain subjects are handled. I'm not moaning about the subjects, I'm moaning about the writing and the handling and the way it's done, because it cheapens the subject. I think it's good for Doctor Who to discuss things. I think it's good to push narratives forward, but it is still an entertainment programme, and it has to be done in a clever way. That's my only problem with it. But I've been recently watching a lot of stuff that I wouldn't normally watch in terms of live fan reaction shows, just to sort of gauge the levels of it. And I mean, there are quite a few that you watch on YouTube. I mean, there is a particular one nearly every day, and it's going on for about 3 hours at a time, and it's just the most pathetically whingy. I mean, it reminds me of the crap we had in the 80s with the Day of Action, you know, where the DWB magazine was wanting to organise a national phone-in to the BBC to flood them with, you know, complaints, why haven't you brought Doctor Who back? And it's that sort of, this is our show, and how dare you decide that you're going to make it this way?
It's like a Twitter thread I read yesterday where there was this person arguing. I was like, Series 12 is badly written, that is an objective fact. and everyone's like, no, that's literally an opinion.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's a fact.
I want to get hold of their objective list of what makes good writing. I love that.
The thing is, it's like they were trying to like really justify themselves, because like, look, I don't mind that you like the show. I don't mind that bad writing isn't a big deal for you. I just want to know why you think bad writing is fine, because it is a fact that it's badly written. It's like, stop that.
It's just bad argument.
Exactly.
But there's almost this performative aspect to criticism now, and also to hating, you know, to strong and shouty criticism. I'm quite happy not to engage with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the sort of thing I've been watching, and it's not because I agree with it in any way, it's mainly because I want to see what their point of view is, and I'm wanting to see if they are making any good points. Sometimes, there's the odd one now and again. Most of the time it's, I don't like this, why don't you not like it either? You know,
I just think why put yourself through that.
Yeah,
because I mean, I think you can choose to be selective about who you're listening to as well. Because I've enjoyed going on Twitter after I've seen an episode and finding some reactions, and it helps me shape up what I've thought about an episode, and you know, things that I didn't spot, and often quite funny memes like the Cybermen heads in the air and so on. And I actually remember Max Curtis, who discovered talking about Orphan 55. You know, having discovered that really interesting thread, and since then followed him. That's somebody who is producing kind of thoughtful criticism. Yeah. And it's not all lovely and it's not all horrible. It's actually like this, didn't like that, and why. And that's what I think there is to gain from it. So I don't really want to poke my head any deeper into a swamp of performative negativity.
Sometimes it's just absolute fucking nonsense and just sheer nastiness for the sake of it. Max Curtis did make some interesting points about Orphan 55. I totally disagree, but that was fine because I thought he made them very eloquently.
Exactly.
And, and that's what I like sometimes. I don't need to agree with something. As long as if someone's really laying into it or really defending it, then show you're working sometimes, if you're going to sort of stand on that pulpit.
I just can't be bothered to hate things that much.
Yeah.
I can get angry about real life things.
Yeah,
fair enough.
absolutely.
Because those are worth getting angry about because they actually affect you. I'm not a fan of, say, Last Jedi, but I totally get why people might be, and I'm not angry enough about it to talk about it more than that. It's the same with Doctor Who. Like, I didn't think Series 11 was particularly that exciting, but I've seen that people like it. I'm glad that they do, because I don't want everyone to hate something I hate, because that's just
absolutely
pointless.
And the show would be cancelled.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
being a critic's easy.
It really is.
Well, I think being a bad critic's easy.
I can passionately disagree about an episode or get annoyed about some of the way certain things are done, but after the rant is over,
Then you turn back into Bruce Banner and the cello music
exactly.
starts, basically. There's something in the world that has really crystallised now in terms of outrage as a kind of industry. It's a cliche almost. It is something that the sort of dark side of fandom touches on a lot of the truly dark side of human discourse now.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know how we can do it better, but for me, there's a protective thing because, my mental health would disintegrate if I just tried to engage with half of that.
Well,
so I just shut myself away from it. I don't go to those corners of the internet more.
Like I was saying with those Series 12 reviews that were written before the Series Ed, one of the reviews is titled "The Doctor is Still a Woman."
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But it's like,
Or is she? I mean, maybe it's Graham.
it's the bit I don't understand is, okay, I know there was a backlash to it at the time, it wasn't nearly as big though, but Missy is now, I feel, a universally liked character.
Well, do you
So
get the
what's
same
issue
people
here?
decrying Jodie as a female Doctor and Missy as a female Master? Or
I
is
just
there...
don't understand what the
Master's
issue
okay,
is.
but don't touch the Doctor.
I think it's like, not the main character.
All the problems with the current show are all going to be blamed on Jodie. I don't think it's anything to do with the Doctor. For me, it's all writing, but she's the face of the show, so therefore she's blamed.
Yeah, it really annoys me with that as well, because you had it obviously when David Tennant left. Everyone's golden boy left.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get all the fans like, Doctor Who died with Matt Smith. Okay, if that really is your opinion, you mean it died with Stephen Moffat?
Doctor Who resurrected when it became bigger than ever.
No, but regardless of
I agree
disagreeing
with
with the opinion...
But you get the people who...
The point is you're blaming the
say-
wrong person.
Yeah, you'll get the people who say, it was Matt Smith, it was Peter Capaldi. And it's like...
That's
no,
a team
it was-
effort
it
to
was-
some extent.
It was the writer.
Exactly.
Without good writing, the show's nothing. You can have the best actor in the world there, and it's going to falter if
'Cause-
they're having to say
Because
rubbish.
the argument boils down to, okay, if you really think that it's Jodie's fault, are you going to tell me that the Battle of Ranskarav Kolos is a great season finale if Matt Smith's in it?
I'm sure he would have been watchable, but it's the only
episode's
bloody
still not
thing
gonna be
would
great,
be
is
shit.
it?
Exactly.
It's in the middle, as always. A great actor can lift a bad script, but only so far. And a great script can be good for a mediocre actor. But
You've got some really shit Tom Baker stories, and he's good in it, and he's amusing. It's still only a turd that's been slightly polished. Do you know what I mean? And
we have an episode title.
I personally think, I really like Jodie. I said last week about her emerging darkness is certainly good for the character. I think it works well for
Absolutely.
her. I think she sort of took a bit of time to find herself in the role. I think she's doing a good job. I've got no problem with the Doctor being a woman. When I watched the reveal, I jumped up and sort of punched air, and it was comforting to myself that I'd done that, because I thought, right, it's not me sort of just being right on saying, oh no, a female Doctor's a really cool idea. I was genuinely really happy that she's the Doctor.
I thought at the time this is a shot in the arm for the programme.
Yeah, because I was really happy at the time as well. Although I had a thing at that time where I wanted to be surprised by a regeneration, because I don't like Doctor announcements.
Yeah.
Because I was too young to remember this happened, but I don't remember David Tennant being announced. I just would have liked the surprise, so I did actually try to not find out, because I was at work when the announcement came, so
Yes.
didn't matter. So
It lasted an hour, didn't it?
Well, I got home from work and you said to me, you're not going to be able to do this.
That's exactly what my experience was. I was at my ex's and she said, they've announced the new Doctor, and I was like, oh, don't tell me. And she was
Yeah.
like, no, you need to go and watch it because there's no way
Yeah.
you're not going to find
Yeah,
out.
it's-
And within 20 minutes, somebody had texted me saying, oh, female Doctor, what about that, eh?
Something that I will say about this era, at least, is he keeps it very tight, doesn't he? So
Yeah.
I think if a regeneration did come, we wouldn't know who it was.
Very possibly, and we
Which
may
I'd be
well
happy
have
with.
multiple ones tonight, who knows. But
We're going to get through the 20th Doctor tonight.
that does stray into the argument of last week about keeping a lid on things and also publicity, because you've got to promote it as well, and I don't feel the show is promoted
It is a
very
tightrope,
well
I
at the
guess.
moment because they're too spoiler phobic, as it were.
Yeah, although, however, something that was pointed out on What Culture's Weekly Doctor Who thing
I watched that.
is that because we don't currently know the real life contractual obligations
Yeah.
of the companions, there is actually a sense of danger for them this episode because we don't know if they're back for next year.
That's
We
very
know
true.
Jodie is,
I slightly
but none of
resent
them have said
that,
anything.
that real world knowledge intruding into the programme narratively.
When the classic show was on the air, we didn't really have spoilers. Okay, the internet didn't exist. When RTD brought it back, there are magazines devoted to up-and-coming plots in soap operas, and that's a massive thing now. And that's when Doctor Who entered that realm. You know, you're going to find these things out. Now, you get people that will be okay with that, myself. You know, I don't want the show ruined completely, but I kind of like the anticipation sometimes. And then you get people like yourself who
Live in
don't
a
want to
cave.
know a single thing.
Yeah, because it's like, can you imagine how good the cliffhanger World Enough in Time would have been if it was more utopia?
Yeah, we were talking about
So
that,
easy.
didn't we? I said that specifically. You know, okay, they spoiled the Cybermen, which was a bit shit, but they spoiled fucking the Master.
And the reason it was spoiled was because they put it in the trailer, which means they'd filmed it, edited it, all that. They'd got away with that without anyone seeing
Exactly.
it. So you just didn't need to.
I know. There's a balance to it. I mean, you've got to sort of give a bit of drip to create a buzz and anticipation, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Spyfall Part 1 was a great cliffhanger because we didn't know it was coming.
Exactly.
You did.
Okay, I did, but that I completely kept that to myself because just because I might be happy with that, I know that other people aren't, and I don't want to spoil people's enjoyment of it. You know, I like watching it my way, but my way is not everybody else's way. One of the best things they've done this year, for example, is Fugitive of the Judoon. Now, it was a pretty much open secret that Jack was back. You know, few people didn't know about it. I mean, it was pretty obvious, even if you say didn't have any spoiler knowledge,
I
that
knew.
within a couple of minutes you could find that out. But that was them throwing the red herring. That was the smoke and mirrors, because the real thing was obviously the reveal of Joe Martin's character. And that, to me, that was a clever piece of engineering.
It's high stakes stuff you're playing for, though, if you're
Yeah.
going to have to bring back a returning companion every time you want.
You obviously get the sense that that character is coming back at some point, and that was just a little bit of throwaway.
Well, you said
as
at
a
the time,
tease.
it sort of cheapened Jack's return that it was used for that function.
Yeah, well, I don't think it cheapened the return. I think it was lovely, but the whole reason for it, as I said, was one, smoke and mirrors, don't look over there, look over there. Two, let's get rid of these fucking companions for the episode so we can actually get on with an actual story.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm being a bit flippant, but you see my point.
So yeah, the Caretaker was great. But it's time we choose our next story for discussion, so let's fire up the randomizer.
Look, when I give the word, press the button. The big one? Yes, maybe it works in conjunction with the others.
Here goes. Time for another episode. Matt Smith.
Wibbly
Matt
wobbly,
Smith.
wibbly wobbly.
All right, well, let's try and find out. Now, what could it be?
The Christmas Invasion.
Hey!
It's David Tennant, new series. But David Tennant also, it's the first ever Christmas special
Yep.
in New Who. I'm not counting Feast of Stephen, of course, here. Yeah, the regeneration story as well, of course.
This is actually possibly one of the easiest regeneration stories for a Doctor, because really and truly, he's only in it for 10 minutes. I mean, he's in bed for most of it. He's mirroring Peter Davison.
It was his
future
doctor, I guess,
father-in-law.
yeah.
It is heavily focused on the companions. Again, as we were just discussing, no problem with that. First Christmas story, that was incredibly exciting. Connor and I have got some great memories
Great.
of Christmas stories because it was of an added excitement for Christmas Day. I mean, this was 2005 Christmas, so you would have been about 7.
Why don't you share any memories you have of this right now, and then you can email in your thoughts beyond that.
It was actually a few firsts for me, although obviously before Doctor Who came back I'd seen Classic Who and things like that. Although this was kind of the first regeneration, as in live for me. Obviously I'd seen them before, but this was the first time it happened, like
New.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canonically, obviously, first Christmas episode. It was just really exciting. It is a good story, and you've got like returning characters as well, which just sort of help things along with like Harriet Jones, and obviously you didn't have a change of companion, but you still had Mickey and Jackie in it as well. That does tend to help bringing in new Doctors.
I think it's also quite a cosy thing, isn't it?
Yeah, because they did it with Peter Capaldi as well, because they had the Paternoster gang, and like you said, he's actually only really in it for about 10 minutes, but he does steal it. It's a great performance right off the bat.
Well, he bursts out at the end and is glorious, isn't he?
Yeah, it completely sells himself straight away. You know, his opening of the TARDIS doors on Sycorax ship, you're like, yep, that's the Doctor. It's the same with, Matt Smith when he climbs out the TARDIS, and you've done it straight away, and it's great.
It's also quite interesting because he comes across as sort of very sort of mad and Tom Baker-esque, this whole who am I, am I a fighter, am I a lover? And so you've got all that jokiness, and then at the very end he throws the Satsuma and kills the Sycorax.
No second chances.
No second chances, and that sort of, and it's like, whoa,
That reinvention of the character is stared in the face for the first time in the show, and in a much more on-screen way. It's talked about explicitly. The Doctor's articulating his new character.
Yeah, because you have a complete opposition to how, say, Christopher Eccleston was before him. Because at the end of the episode, you get this sort of sense that he's kind of a bit more family oriented now, that he has Christmas dinner with Jackie and Mickey and Rose, and Christopher Eccleston's Doctor just wouldn't have done that, mainly because him and Jackie didn't like each other. But Jackie's warmed to this new one now.
Christopher Eccleston's Doctor had survivor's guilt. This Doctor is coming to terms with it. In the Day of the Doctor, the man who regrets, the man who forgets. It's the process of grief.
Yeah, settling down a bit more and just sort of accepting that, this has happened, but this is sort of my new life now, and I can
make a difference.
Yeah,
it's a strong opener for a new Doctor for
Very
sure,
much.
and lots to talk about when we come back to it. So, Christmas Invasion, lovely.
I don't have a sonic screwdriver because I'm not off on a romp. I call it what it is.
A great loss of pomp and circumstance.
While we've got the randomizer fired up, let's play a bit of Romp or Pomp.
You need to get some sort of game show introduction music to us.
I'm veering dangerously close enough to game show presenter voices.
I have noticed.
Connor, new to this format, as are we really, we've just done it once before. I'm going to click the randomizer, we'll get a story up, and then we just quickly say each of us whether we think it's Romp or Pomp. Romp being the kind of fun knockabout stories, and Pomp being the kind of alternate version, the more serious ones. It's not a perfect dichotomy. So here we go, first one. Image of the Fendal.
Haven't seen
it. That's alright.
Pomp.
Pomp, yeah, it's quite spooky, isn't it?
It's very good.
Here goes another one. The Green Death.
Romp. But, the other thing is...
both.
Romp, Pomp. The thing is, though, that's fucking random. So every time you do this, we're getting, classic. And every time we do
I'm checking the settings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, trolling Chaz setting is on. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Peter Capaldi.
Romp.
Yeah. It's not a very serious one.
Next one. The Time Warrior.
Hey.
Romp.
Oh,
Romp.
It's beautiful.
It's good. Romp. Next one. Dragonfire.
Romp.
Yeah. Fugitive the Judoon.
Pomp.
It's half Romp,
It
half
sort of
Pomp,
starts
I think.
off Romp, gets Pomp, and then becomes holy fuck.
Captain Jack scenes Romp.
Yeah,
I think anything with Barrowman on screen is automatically adds 10 to the Romp counter. Okay, let's do a couple more. Planet of the Dead. It's rompy,
Romp,
The Christine stuff is rompy and
bit jokey and fun.
I mean, it's a sort of seasonal special, isn't it? So it's always got that edge of the romp there. Okay, next one. The King's Demons. It's a bit of a romp.
Oh, God almighty. Ainley's chewing scenery like a beaver.
So any scenery nibbling gives it a couple of points in the rompometer, we reckon. Okay, last one for this time. Time Heist.
Romp. But my God, that's a
So
good
fun.
play on the heist genre.
Great. Oh, well, that was fun.
I challenge you to a contest of strength.
A fight?
Without weapons.
It's challenge time. So, as you'll know, we have challenged Chaz to watch The Mutants, and now is the time to find out what he thought of it.
Well, I watched it.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. So basically what happened was, sitting down ready to watch it, and got a knock at the door, and I thought, oh my God, I've come back again from the future. But no, two lovely young men dressed impeccably in black suits, little name badges, called Malachi and Elan, sort of asked me if I'd heard the good news. And I thought, do you know what? I've had a really crap couple of weeks. I would welcome some good news. So I invited them in and we started talking. And I just said, look, I'm about to watch this story, the science fiction Doctor Who story, The Mutants. And they said, wow, we'd love to watch that, Funny enough, the titles all started, but I thought I'd fallen asleep, but I maybe did, maybe didn't. But the next thing I remember was the end titles of the last episode.
Oh, God.
And I just don't know. They kept going on about their papal mainframe.
Have you got any kind of Sharpie marks on your hands or anything?
Yeah, funny enough. I mean, I was absolutely covered in Sharpie marks.
I don't think it counts, mate.
Okay.
Predictable as ever, Doctor.
It is time for Doctor by Doctor, where we randomly select a doctor and then talk about their era. So, Connor, as our guest, you get to do the honours and pick one of our folded up bits of paper. So, give it a shugle. Very good.
Your entire life's been leading up to this.
Very exciting. We picked the wild card. So we're going to talk about alternative doctors rather than any particular one doctor. Tonight is going to potentially add more to that list.
Do you want to leave it till next week then?
Well, no, I think we got to sort of respect the randomness, but let's just sort of define the territory a little bit. So I think we've got Peter Cushing as an early alternative who made 2 Dalek films based on the first 2 Dalek serials from the show itself. We've got comedy doctors, like various people throughout the years of...
Is that Curse of Fatal Death?
Yes, yeah, we've got the various Fatal Death doctors. We've got Lenny Henry, we talked about way back. Spike Milligan did a Doctor Who sketch. Loads of people have done Doctor Who sketch.
Genuinely think we should wash over the Spike Milligan
yeah,
one.
Absolutely. I think, did French and Saunders do one? There's been a bunch of things.
They're not necessarily alternative doctors, they're more Doctor Who
sort of
related sketches.
Well, maybe we'll skip those and talk more about actual alternative takes. So we could go into Big Finish and so on. Yeah.
Is John Hurt part of this?
Oh, yes. Obviously.
I didn't know if he had a...
No, he doesn't have a card of his own, so the War Doctor is a definite...
I think he'll dominate this one.
Oh, he's so aggressive.
Well, I've listened to Big Finish.
So yeah, great.
Yeah,
well, let's kick off with John Hurt then, because he's canon, and we'll take it from there.
God, that worked.
I really liked John Hurt's performance, really. I think he actually managed to sell himself, even in just the one episode, much like what Paul McGann managed to do. But I think it was a really nice balance to connect classic and New Who with, because he did feel more like a classic Doctor.
Yeah.
But then, obviously the Time War aspects and things like that did make him feel New Who. And he was great in Day of the Doctor. A really welcome addition that just fit in seamlessly. And then obviously, like with Paul McGann again, Big Finish expanded him.
That's the exact thing we were talking about last week, how he was a classic Doctor commenting on New Who, as it were.
Yeah.
You expect a good performance as John Hurt. I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but Doctor Who's still an interesting gig because it's not everybody can sort of pass it off, and he really carries it off within that one episode, establishes himself as a Doctor and a very good Doctor, and as Connor said, Big Finish have found a gap.
It's a gap in the fabric of reality.
So they have inserted him.
Tell us more about those. I haven't heard any of these, but what's out there with Big Finish's War Doctor stuff?
He got his own series, really. 4 box sets, 3 episodes each. So he basically got a full one series.
Fantastic.
12 episodes of War Doctor. Unfortunately, John Hurt passed before I assumed they could have done more. The series he was in was very good. It wasn't sort of like epic, in the heart of the Time War stuff that maybe you'd expect. Well, most of it anyway. But it's more John Hurt's Doctor helping where he can on planets that are getting affected by it.
Right, yeah.
So there's an episode where in a planet that was used as a battleground.
Oh, sounds cool. I'll have to look him up.
Is it Lilo or Romano? One of them is in the last box set. Which is actually really nice, seeing that relationship between him and a previous companion.
But see, that's great because they built him up, he's the dark shame the Doctor's shame, and then he gets redeemed by Day of the Doctor. Like you say, obviously he died, but did they manage to wrap it up?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's not a case of the last episode of the fourth box set led into Day of the Doctor. No, because I think they might have wanted to expand, because they also did another series with Derek Jacobi as the War Master. And there's one where it's him versus Paul McGann, which I definitely think was meant to be
To be the War Doctor.
him.
Yeah.
There was some great potential. It did end really well, and there was expansions of the Time War as well, because they had the Sontaran aspect of the Time War, because they were desperate to get involved, weren't they? But
Yeah.
they just weren't allowed.
Please, can we play?
Sort of like standing outside the gates going, oh.
I think it's interesting also that having stories set in the Time War, they can't all be sort of super big and epic. You've got to just sort of touch on smaller elements of it.
I mean, it's like war in general, I mean, not everything was the Battle of Midway or, Dunkirk.
Yeah.
It's small,
Small human stories in the middle of it all. So, let's talk about Peter Cushing. Connor, I take it you've seen the Peter Cushing films, have you?
Yeah, saw them loads as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I grew up watching them. They were repeated quite a lot, I think.
Bank holiday staple. Really.
And I said before, they were kind of, for me, they almost overwrote the actual episodes from Doctor Who itself, because they're kind of bigger budget, colour, more exciting versions of those stories.
You would have seen these, I certainly did, see these stories before we saw the Dalek invasion of Earth, before we saw the Daleks.
Yeah.
You would come across them and it'd be like, oh, this is my afternoon sorted now.
I have such happy memories of them. The kind of the swirling title sequences, the shoopy music. Can almost quote a lot of them verbatim. The second one especially, which is got a wider scope and more epic.
And
it's
of
really
course
enjoyable.
Bernard Cribbins' foray into Doctor Who.
Yeah, glorious as Tom the policeman.
They strike a reasonably good balance, I would say, between action and that slapstick comedy. There's a lot of sort of nice little comedic moments.
The first one less so, I think.
Yeah, the
Bernard
first one's
is
slightly more serious, but
no, I think Roy Castle's character is much more of a buffoon in the first one.
Yeah, I suppose.
But the thing about this, the big, if you like, plot point is the Doctor's human, clearly and established as a human inventor who's just built the TARDIS in his back garden. And so Susan is still his granddaughter, but she's a child now rather than a young woman. And he's also accompanied by, I think, is it Jenny in the first one and Louise in the second?
Something like that. His niece Louise in the second. I think Jenny's his...
Is she another
niece
granddaughter?
as well?
Another niece, yeah. So Roy Castle comes in playing Ian as Jenny's kind of love interest in the first one. And then Bernard Cribbins plays Tom, who's a policeman who stumbles into the TARDIS in the brilliant opening sequence of the second film.
Actually, I think she is called Barbara. I think Jenny Lind.
Jenny Lind, yes, sorry.
Is the actress that played her.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I was determined to make some mistakes so that Connor could correct them for us.
They're just really enjoyable, aren't they?
They're fun.
Because obviously, I'm not going to say they're better than the actual episodes, that's probably sacrilege. But you take a 7-part episode like the Daleks, and you make it into sort of feature-length film.
But it does show you how much padding, for example, there is in some of these early Doctor Who's. And I love Dalek Invasion of Earth and the Daleks, but I mean, I'm the first to admit that they kind of are stretching the point.
What do we think of Cushing, though? I mean, this is... Because does he get beyond just playing doddery old scientist? He's a great actor, undisputably a wonderful, wonderful actor. But
I think he does. I really do. Do you remember An Adventure in Space and Time, where they're describing the character of the Doctor to William Hartnell? That twinkle in the eye and stuff. And I thought they're sort of describing Peter Cushing. Hartnell played Laird. He was grumpy, and he evolved into a more sort of avuncular character. Peter Cushing was that description of the Doctor in the first place.
I think there's less time for the nuance in the films.
No, I think he is really good. I don't think making him a human scientist was necessarily a problem. I mean, basically because they're not canon. Although there was a plan to make them canon in Day of the Doctor.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
They were because they were going to have the posters in the Black Archive, and that would have been like humanity's attempt to sort of...
tell the story.
All the actors beyond Peter Cushing as well were really good. The only major difference really is obviously Susan. Still a good actress, but also can't really have the same ending of Invasion of Earth.
that might be considered a little bit dodgy. I think Roberta Tovey's a better Susan in a lot of ways.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to.
Well, see, it's okay. I'm quite happy to take the toxic fandom flack.
I am looking forward to Big Finish's upcoming box set of Susan in the Time War.
Oh God, yeah. Well, Roberto Tofi's got a box set coming out.
Yeah.
Susan,
the two Susans.
Susan travelling from war-struck planet to war-struck planet, and spraining her ankle in each one.
It's called Susan's War, and it's basically every Time Lord's been called up, so she's been called up too.
Right.
See what she goes on diplomatic mission. I wonder what will happen to, is it David?
Oh yes, her husband. So let's move on. Let's find another alternative Doctor. So we have got the ones in Curse of Fatal Death. I mean, it's a comedy, but it's also a Stephen Moffat comedy sketch. So in a funny way, almost some bits of it are like a template for New Who, and not least a female Doctor at the end, of course. So really, our Jodie Whittaker's thunder was stolen not only by Ruth but by Joanna Lumley.
Yeah.
Yes. Curse of Fatal Death is on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth digging out. It's it must have been released as well.
Oh, it has. I've got the video.
Yeah, go and buy it. The other thing it bridges to New Who is the idea of the Doctor having a romantic involvement with the companion, because this is the big twist. The Doctor's going to settle down and marry his companion.
And it's so weird how many jokes from that come up in Stephen Moffat's era of Doctor Who as well.
We've touched on Moffat being the great recycler of his own stuff.
Although Chibnall recently recycled a joke from there as well. In Spyfall, when the Master was stuck in the 40s, and he comes back, he's like, that was the longest 70 years of
That's
my
right.
life.
You said at the time
400 years in the sodding zoo.
Jonathan Pryce is a great master, isn't he?
Wonderful. I mean,
just wonderful.
He absolutely is relishing that part.
And yeah, Rowan Atkinson, strangely
very good.
Yeah, as an alternative Ninth Doctor. And then what's the order? It's Richard E. Grant, then Jim Broadbent, and then Hugh Grant, and then Joanna Lumley.
Yeah, that's right. It is.
So Richard E. Grant's the rudest of the bunch. Broadbent just regenerates because he's too shy to talk to girls.
You know what Davey last week was talking about? He never gets the actor he wants to play the Doctor.
Broadbent was
the one time he got the actor he wanted was Jim
a throwaway
Broadbent.
spoof. And those were all wonderful big names at the time. And of course Hugh Grant, superstar at that point.
I've just seen it's really weird that Joanna Lumley would have been the 13th.
Yes. No, the parallels are
That's very strange.
Really bizarre, isn't it? It's almost as if it was a plan for
I remember
him.
thinking at the time that Hugh Grant was actually really good in the kind of the small, almost serious section when he's dying. He plays that really nicely.
I know that Bill Nye was apparently first choice for the Ninth Doctor, but one of the reasons they went with Christopher Eccleston was because they kind of thought casting an older guy would probably kill him with the punishing schedule.
Eccleston's an inspired choice, though. It's hard to do better than that. I mean, we could talk about alternative Doctors in terms of the ones who were nearly cast as well. It's potentially rich, fertile territory to come back to.
And it's also an entire episode.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, on the topic of Richard E. Grant, he was the canonical Ninth Doctor.
That's right.
Until he was
the Shalka, that's right.
Yes, and Derek Jacobi was the master in that particular
at least
story.
one of them worked out.
Yeah, so
he didn't pass the
How
audition.
many Ninth Doctors have there been?
Well, at least 3 then.
Yeah.
So alternative Doctors. Who else have we got?
Somebody called Joe something.
Joe Martin, yes. It's hard to talk about Ruth until
It really
we know a bit
is.
more, so I think we'll have to revisit
more
that
tonight, probably.
Yeah, stay tuned.
I haven't seen Scream of the Shark. Was Richard E. Grant good?
It's a sort of animation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's alright.
I think he was better in Fatal Death.
To be honest, it's not that I don't like it, it's just that actually I haven't seen it. So when I eventually watch The Mutants, you could possibly challenge me to watch Scream of the Shalka.
Well,
I have watched The Mutants. What am I
I
saying?
don't have a whole other regenerative cycle, so I'm not sure I'll live that long.
The only other ones we could talk maybe a little about is the stage Doctors. We had Trevor Martin in The Seven Keys to Doomsday.
David Banks?
David Banks played the cyber leader, played the Doctor as understudy to John Pertwee.
David Warner?
Oh yeah, of course, the
Unbound Doctor.
The Unbounds.
And was Derek Jacobi one of those as well?
Yes, he was.
Was he?
I think there was a whole season.
David Warner's Unbound Doctor is the one that's still going. I don't listen to them, but I know that he's still in the Bernice Summerfield box sets.
I think he's the alternative third Doctor.
Oh yeah, yes he is, because
Geoffrey Belden was the first Doctor, and the first technical female Doctor was Arabella Weir, who is in Two Doors Down. She was sort of quite big in comedy in the 90s and stuff. Actually, she's the third Doctor, but she plays it as this slob who likes to get pissed a lot.
Okay, any last shouts for another alternative? I should have made a list.
I could say one more, and that's Nick Briggs. He played, and that is actually, I would say, quite important, because he played the Doctor in 2 formats. He played the Doctor in audio in the precursor to all the Big Finish stories, which was audiovisuals. And he played a really interesting Doctor, some great emotional range in it. They also had him in the official Doctor Who magazine comic. Paul McGann regenerated into the Nick Briggs Doctor for, I think it was 3 or 4 stories. But it turns out that it was a trap, and it all got revealed in a story called Wormwood, where it was revealed that Paul McGann was still actually the Doctor.
You can tell the sexists are hoping for that again.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Going, come on, Graham.
You know how I was saying earlier in the podcast about fandom, Wormwood gets mentioned practically in every fucking sentence. I was like, oh well, they've obviously done it this way, and I'm thinking to yourself, do you honestly think that they are going to go that complex?
Well, you watch what you say, because you could be eating your words in like 2 hours' time.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go on record. The people that are coming up with these theories, you're going to cut this, but I don't care. The people that come up with these theories are sitting in a corner, masturbating into their own fucking feces.
It's the end. But the moment has been prepared for.
9 times out of 10.
Listen, thank you everybody for listening, and thank you Connor for joining us. It's really lovely to have another voice and another kind of perspective on things. If you have any feedback or questions, or if you know the name of the Doctor, then we can be reached at randomizerpodcast@gmail.com.
And you can reach us on Twitter at randomizerpod, and in both cases that's randomizer with an S, not a Z.